Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're looking at Llamatron, which was a 1991 release from Llamasoft, developed by Jeff Minter and released as shareware. Now, Jeff Minter was fascinated by the concept of shareware at the time, because even as early as 1991 he was becoming frustrated by what he referred to as the men in suits interfering with the creative process of developing video games and marketing them and that sort of thing. And so he saw shareware as a much more democratic option, both for developers of games and players of games to be able to put their work out into the wild, and for audiences to be able to support those creators directly without feeling like they're paying into a marketing budget or falling for advertising or that sort of thing. And yeah, this was a great example of this done right. So it was very widely distributed, with one of its most famous appearances being on the ST format cover disc, where it was positioned as a full game for free and so on. And yeah, Jeff Minter was very fond of this model to begin with, and he was always very fond of the creators having the freedom to do what they want. And in that sense, the modern indie scene probably owes a great deal to Jeff Minter for establishing that viewpoint very early on, and pointing out that yes, that was an acceptable way to do things. You didn't have to go through a publisher, you didn't have to go through the men with suits, you didn't have to have heavy marketing plans. Sometimes word of mouth was enough. Now, I don't know how much money Jeff Minter actually made from Llamatron, but Llamatron certainly got around a fair bit. Most people who had an ST probably played Llamatron at one point or another, and because you could freely copy shareware, most people probably had a copy of it in their collection as well. So anyway, Llamatron's a great game. I've been looking forward to playing it again, so let's go play Llamatron. Okay, here we are with Llamatron from Jeff Minter. This program is shareware. If you enjoy this game and would like to see more and better stuff from me in this format, please support me by paying Llamasoft a £5 shareware fee. Be honest. That's a UK address, Yak 1991. Send to Llamasoft. Don't send stuff to this address, nor because he doesn't live there anymore. All who do will receive a Zarjaz Llama poster, newsletter and copy of Andy's Attack while stocks last. Please spread this game everywhere. Cheers, Yak. Alright, Llamatron. Still can't say it. Llamatron. Not Llamatron. Read scroller at title screen for play details. We'll wait 1 minute for scroller to happen. Use joystick to move beastie. Firing is automatic in the direction of travel. If you have a suitable arrangement of 2 joysticks, you can play the game in original Robotron style. So yeah, this game is basically Robotron, but with llamas. Even including a lot of the original Robotron sound effects. So there's several ways you can play this. You got one player. You can play one player and droid, which means you have a sort of computer player helping you out. Or you can play team, where a second player on a second joystick controls a camel and helps you out. We're going to play one player in droids to begin with, and then maybe we'll have a go solo as well. Alright, kill grunts, grab beasties. So, as in classic Robotron, you have to destroy all the enemies on a stage to proceed, and collect not the family members in this case, but the beasties that are wandering around, the goats, the sheep, and all that sort of thing. Apologies about all the flashing lights if that's something that bothers you, but this is a Jeff Minter game, so a lot of you should have come to expect this already, but I will put a suitable warning on the beginning, because you know how people get if you don't do that these days. I do love the sound effects in this. There's a combination of sound effects that have been stolen from other places and ones that Jeff Minter has created himself. Oh, yeah. And I just absolutely love the way it looks like it's going to swear at you when you lose a life.
Oh, and the screaming fractal. I'd forgotten about the screaming fractal. How could I forget about the screaming fractal? This game is so ridiculous. I absolutely love it. Absolutely wonderful. Whoops! Now this sort of thing is what Jeff Minter was always really good at. The few other Jeff Minter games that we've seen prior to this point, you'll remember most of those were homages to classic arcade games as well. We have actually seen Andy's Attack, which is the bonus you could get for registering this one. But then there's also stuff like Grid Runner, which was a bit like Centipede. There's obviously this, which is Llamatron, and he's done all sorts of other things over the years as well. Some of his slightly lesser known 8-bit stuff as well. Again, a lot of those were homages to classic computer games. So he's done takes on Defender a few times. Attack of the Mutant Camels is very much like The Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600. Oops. Which I actually didn't know until quite recently. Because I didn't have a 2600 back in the day. I didn't know a lot of its popular games, so I had no idea that Attack of the Mutant Camels was, to put it politely, an homage to The Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600. I thought it was a completely original concept. But it was not. But that's fine, because Attack of the Mutant Camels absolutely has its own distinctive feel as well. The thing I did always rather like about Jeff Minter's games is that although they sort of paid homage to these classic arcade games, they often weren't quite as difficult as those original arcade versions, which meant in a lot of cases they were a bit more enjoyable. They didn't feel quite so unfair. So like you see here, we're up to wave 16. I doubt I could ever do that in the original Llamatron. But then you don't get assaulted by packets of cigarettes in the original Llamatron either. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. I've always liked this game. I've always liked this game, and it sort of made an appearance on some various other platforms as well. I think there was a PC version. But the SD version is the one that I sort of grew up with and was most familiar with. Packets of Rizzlers. It's actually quite a remarkable amount crammed into here. Jeff Minter did actually release two versions of Llamatron. He did a 1 megabyte version and a half megabyte version, and he made a deliberate attempt to ensure that the half megabyte version was not really sort of crippled in any way. All it meant was that the samples were in lower quality, so the sounds weren't quite as good. This is the 1 megabyte version we're playing here, so this is sort of the optimal way to experience Llamatron, if you will. Oh, lasered. Lasered right in the face. Those lasers there are a bit of an homage to Grid Runner, which had XY zappers. Oh dear, it's getting tricky now. That droid player is really helpful, actually. Oh dear, I think we can continue. I'm not going to do that for now because I do want to try the version without the droid as well. So let's let that expire. And of course, congratulations, enter something wonderful. I love the ooh in there, which is stolen from Clacks. Jeff Minter always did love his Atari games as well. One of his most famous pieces of work being Tempest 2000? Tempest 2000, I think it was, on the Atari Jaguar. He had a long and proud history of supporting doomed hardware. With the Atari Jaguar being probably the most famous example. The one I was most gutted never to see come to fruition, though, was the Conix multi-system, which I remember reading stuff about in Ace magazine. And the Conix multi-system was going to be this amazing console that it had a controller that you could transform between steering wheel, sort of flight yoke, and conventional joystick. And it also had like an arcade-style moving seat as well. In retrospect, the whole thing was spectacularly ambitious and almost certainly doomed to fail right from the outset, but I still thought it would have been amazing if it had actually come to fruition, and Jeff Minter did as well, because he was one of the people who was working on stuff for that system. There was going to be a new version of, I think, either Attack or Revenge of the Mutant Camels for it. I forget which one. Yeah, this is tricky without the droid. Not impossible, though. You do get a nice sort of regular flow of extra lives in this to... Oops. Unless you just walk into something deadly like I just did. And that just sort of keeps you ticking along nicely. Oh, yeah. Now, as the scrolling text said at the beginning, you can actually play this in traditional Robotron style if you have two joysticks. Doing so is a little bit awkward because in order to make that practical to play, you need to sort of mount them both to your desk. Because there was no such thing as a controller with two joysticks back in the day. Interestingly, there were actually some sort of mounts available that you could get. I think they were primarily aimed at the Atari 2600 market, but there was definitely like a plastic thing you could put two Atari joysticks in and stick on your desk. And that was intended specifically for playing Robotron with. So assuming you had the right type or size of joystick, you could probably use something like that, but because there wasn't really sort of a standard joystick for Atari ST, and those classic Atari joysticks weren't actually that good in the first place, most people I knew had a variety of weird and wonderful third-party controllers. And as such, you couldn't necessarily rely on them fitting into a plastic thing like the one I described. But it was a nice thought nonetheless. And most joysticks from the period did come with sort of suction cups on the bottom as well, so you could sort of stick them to your desk if you wanted to. But then the issue with that sometimes is that desks weren't always arranged optimally to be able to do that, because a lot of people had their computer console right at the front of the desk so you could type on it, which makes perfect sense. Nothing stopping you mounting it to one side, of course, but, you know, these were the things we had to think about. Alright, let's continue. Oh, you keep your score if you continue. That's nice. Very generous. Oh dear, I'm doing terribly. It's those raindrops. You have to walk into the umbrella to open it to stop the raindrops falling, but until then the raindrops are fatal. And you'll see when you respawn, the umbrella closes again and the raindrops start falling again. But there we go, we're through. We're through, we are safe. Apart from the zombie beasties. Oh yeah, this is much trickier without the droid. Maybe I'm just rubbish, which is entirely possible. Alright, watch out for the laser on this one. And indeed everything else. Oh. I might be reaching my limit. Oh dear. Remember how I said this was easier than the arcade versions? Well, turns out that's only really true if you're playing with the droid. Which, to be fair, Jeff Minter does warn you about in the documentation. He does recommend that if you're new to sort of Robotron style games, it's a good idea to play with the droid initially, because it makes life much easier for you. But, well. As you can see, he's not wrong. Oh, indeed. That was my bad. Oh, we're clear. We're clear. We're not clear. I think it's about to all be over for us. Leave me alone. Alright, come on, it's all fine. I can do this. This is easy. Nothing to worry about. Just lots of porcupines and that whatever that thing is. And it's all over. Now then. Yeah, it didn't quite match my previous score. And notice that it's just a single high score table, regardless of whether you're playing with the droid or not. So, yeah, if you want to make life a little bit easier for yourself, play with the droid. Anyway, that is Llamatron. An all-time classic for a variety of platforms, but I will always associate that with the ST because that was where I first encountered it. Yeah, definitely well worth adding to your library. And you can do so without guilt because it is shareware. And I doubt Jeff Minter really wants £5 for it these days. And as I say, do not send anything to that address you saw previously because he doesn't live there anymore. If you really want to send him £5, then check him out on Twitter. Because he is there, he is active on Twitter, usually posting videos of himself feeding digestive biscuits to sheep, which is always a pleasure to see every morning, especially amid all the rampant toxicity and other bollocks going around Twitter every other day. It's just always a pleasure to see morning sheep time from Jeff Minter and a little video from first person of a hand reaching out and giving a digestive biscuit to a very appreciative sheep. Anyway, let's leave that there for today. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.